or anybody else across the world cannot be expected to cut down the $5 trillion smoking business in the world. How funny is it to call out for an actor where the government is earning taxes on alcohol, on cigarettes and rest everything else? I have seen Vijay's trailer, this particular song. I do not understand Tamil language, but I don't find a problem with him smoking on screen.
Shoaib, clearly it is not Vijay's job to actually take it upon himself to take care of the $1 trillion economy that, alcohol or tobacco is really bringing to the country. That is not the argument that can be made at this point in time, because here we are talking about his influence on especially the youth, because even a 5-year-old follows Vijay.
So for that matter, all these gentlemen who've been calling out against a ban on Vijay's film should have to revisit all these films, if you can allow me to name films like Urda Punjab, Charas, Shaitan, Smoke, Dum Maro Dum, High, Go Go Gone, Netflix series called Narcos, Breaking Bad, which are so easily available for a 5-year to a 50 to 60, 70-year-old, available at
But I think the point that they are also trying to make is the clout that Vijay commands as far as the industry is concerned. All right, Shoaib, let me actually bring in Mr. Dhananjay.
The scripts are derived from real-life events.
I would let you, you're very patiently listening to this entire conversation. How do you see the industry suffering with this constant moral policing? I'm going back to this term because every time there is something that sort of irks the morality or the consciousness of the civil society, there is a demand of banning the film or the product or the ad. How do you see this super censors really playing up in future for the film industry and also for the advertisement industry?
See, this particular controversy is, now to my mind, is politically motivated. The reason I'll tell you is that 2021, I'm talking about just 2 years back, Vijay's film with Lokesh Kanagaraj, a film called Master came in. In that film, Vijay was an alcoholist. Basically, he's completely addicted to alcohol. He drinks throughout the film. Nobody made any controversy about Vijay drinking in that film. It just released 2 years back during lockdown. And remember, so many times in so many films, so many actors have been shown smoking on the screen, and songs they had smoking and all. The first poster which came out with the Vijay, with the smoke and all, people objected to it, and
so you are saying later, this is a selective outrage. Why do you think that is? All right. All right, I'm really sorry. We have to wrap this on this broadcast. That's all the time that I had. Considering this is up for grabs, up for debate at the moment, we'd have to wait and watch what really happens to Leo, the film starring Vijay. With that, it's a wrap from my side. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. All through Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first state visit to the US, politics and interest groups kept raking up the minority question. Both Prime Minister Modi and President Biden were even asked this question in their joint statement press briefing. Even as that was on, former US President Barack Obama's comments on this issue were already sparking a political debate. In an exclusive interview with CNN, former US President seemed to warn India that if minority rights are not safeguarded, then at some point India would start pulling apart. Interestingly, former Commissioner of United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, a body that has a history of marking India as a country of particular concern, slammed Obama and asked him to spend his energies complimenting India instead of criticizing it. In India, the government has taken a stern view, defending India's democracy and record. Meanwhile, the opposition has used these comments to further their attack on Modi government. They've even asked the centre to take the criticism positively and act accordingly. There surely needs to be a dispassionate debate on this issue. Data tells us a different story. Pew Research survey in India showed that 98% of Indian Muslims feel free to practice their religion. In India, the NCRB data shows that communal rioting has gone down considerably since the Modi government came to power. Moreover, the minority communities in India make up for 30% of beneficiaries in various schemes by the government. So are the allegations of violation of rights of minorities a claim without any proof? We'll take that question to our guests in just a bit. Several central ministers have hit out at Barack Obama's comments. Let me quickly take you through them. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said we don't discriminate on caste or religion. He even added, you won't find all 72 sects in Muslim countries, but you have all 72 sects of Islam in India. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has hit out at Obama even more sternly, saying that 6 Muslim-majority countries were bombed under his rule. She added over 26,000 bombs were used to target these countries and that this is a deliberate attempt to vitiate the atmosphere in India. Meanwhile, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri also hit out at domestic attempts to question India's democracy, saying that Indian democracy is strong and that minorities are safe here and everywhere. Now, here is why the attack on minority rights in India doesn't stack up. The question in itself is disingenuous because there are no minorities in India on any parameter that have less rights than the rights of others, not even a single parameter. In fact, if you went to the nitty-gritties, Indian laws give special privileges to minorities in India even more than the majority. Temples are under government control, a practice of the British era, but churches and mosques are not. The right to education law gives special status to minority institutions that even Hindu institutions don't have, and I could go on and on. There is not a single instance of any discrimination in any government scheme over religion in the 2 terms of the Modi government. But even if this wasn't about rights but overall atmosphere, as I mentioned, ground surveys themselves show that self-reported discrimination in India is less than even of developed countries like the USA. Pew Research survey shows that Christians and Muslims both consider themselves freer in India than minorities do in USA, for example. But what is also interesting is the absolute difference in tone, tenor, and even words used by former President Obama and current President Joe Biden. While Obama said in his interview that it's appropriate for US President to uphold those principles, he was talking about minority rights, and to challenge trends that are troubling, when Biden was asked the same question, he said for India and USA that we are straightforward with each other and we respect each other. Obama clubbed India with China and said that protection of Muslim minority in a majority Hindu India is worth mentioning to an Indian PM, while Biden actively distinguished between India and China by saying that US-China relationship is not at the same space as India-US relationship because there is respect, because we are democracies. Remember, he recently called Xi Jinping a dictator as well. Now, a comment of Obama's that really raised eyebrows was his assertion that if you do not protect rights of ethnic minorities, then India could start pulling apart. Many feel this was inappropriate for a foreign leader to say and was harking back to the partition of India already done on religious lines. Biden instead said, we believe in the degree of every citizen for India and US. Obama concluded saying that it would be contrary to interests not just of Muslim India but also of Hindu India if Muslim rights are not protected. Biden said instead that valuing all sections is in America's DNA and in India's DNA. So he put India and USA on the same pedestal, not India and China. The big debate that's coming up, are these sweeping claims about minority rights being diminished in India, particularly with regards to this current government, made without ample proof? That's coming up in just a bit.
The former president should spend his energy complimenting India more than criticizing India. India is the most diverse country in human history.
Prime Minister and I had a good discussion about democratic values, and that's the nature of our relationship. We're straightforward with each other, and we respect each other.
यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के विषय में हम अच्छा फ्रेंडशिप चाहते हैं, मगर उधर से भी भारत के रिलीजियस टॉलरेंस के ऊपर एक यूएससीआरएफ है, उनके कमेंट्स आ जाता है, राष्ट्रपति जी ने कुछ बातें बोल रहे हैं।
The Let's go across to the guests who are joining us. R. Rajagopalan is senior journalist, advocate Arshpreet Kadial from the Congress, Sushant Sareen is senior fellow, ORF, and Ashok Sajjanahar is former diplomat. I want to go across to our political representative first. Arshpreet, do you believe that as Indians we need to be told by America whether our record is good or bad? And did you feel that the particular tone in which Mr. Obama made those comments, talking about even the breaking up of India or I don't know what he meant, possibly a partition or a breaking up, was that right to say?
Thank you. First and foremost, kindly allow me an uninterrupted minute. We also have Global Hunger Index. We have the Freedom of Press Index. So yes, if statements are being made with proof, with substance, they are to be taken seriously, especially when a two-time former president is making that statement of who happened to be the basically senior of the current president of US, Mr. Biden. So what we have to see here is, number one, that the Bharatiya Janata Party can try and silence the voice of dissent of questions here in India, but they cannot do that everywhere. And if the Bharatiya Janata Party says that he bombed 6 countries, Muslim countries, this, that, then why did you not condemn it in the first place? Number one. Number two, wasn't he a so-called good friend of Mr. Modi, whom now you're saying happened to have bombed so many countries? And number three,
actually, even Obama, even Mr. Obama called him almost like a good friend, Mr. Modi, in his interview. Even in this interview, he said, "I know him."
So if the Bharatiya Janata Party is saying that he happened to have bombed so many countries, one, why did you not say it then? Why did you not condemn it then? Shows your double standards. Number two, if he was so wrong and he has been so bad, why were you such good friends with him? Number three,
because we are friends with America. We are not friends with a particular president.
One last point, please. So I want to ask the BJP this one thing. If you do not have any discrimination and bias towards ethnic minorities, how many Muslims do you have in Mr. Modi's cabinet? Negligible representation. Number two, the Bharatiya Janata Party is clearly, not interested in answering the questions, because in India, they haven't done a single press conference in 9 long years. Mr. Modi has done none. But in US, he did a press conference. So, credits and congratulations to the Bharatiya Janata Party on this mega achievement. Number three, what happened with regards to UAPA, NSA, sedition, and, all the other cases that have been registered against people.
But these are all laws of the UPA era.
Pick up the stats. Sorry?
These are all laws of the UPA era.
I'm talking of UAPA,
yes.
Not UPA era.
No, of course, so UAPA was brought by whom?
Sedition. I'm not saying brought by whom. I'm talking about the misusage of it. I'm talking about the abuse of this law. And if you pick up the stats, you'll see maximum cases have been registered against the in the Bharatiya Janata Party's regime. Number two, maximum cases have not been led to conviction. It shows that
Arshpreet, you have to be brief in your opening comments so that I can come back to you. 1 second. Let me go across to Sushant Sareen on this as well. The issue is not whether there is discrimination against any minority in India. I don't think anybody can say that there is no discrimination at all, that it is nil or zero. The issues are two. The way India is being held to its quote-unquote minority rights issue, are other countries held to the same standard? Yes or no? The issue is also, is US the one to lecture India? And there was a remarkable difference in the tone that Mr. Obama and Mr. Biden used. Because the current president seems to be taking the line that, whatever are the issues we will discuss, and we are both together on this. In fact, several people even made the comment that USA is not a perfect democracy. There are incredible accusations of human rights violations there against minorities. So my question is twofold. One, is India being held to a different standard and particularly being maligned on this as contrary to facts? And is the US anyone to lecture us, as the government seemed to suggest? Certainly not Mr. Obama should be lecturing us.
Shivani, it's not just about Obama should not lecture us. I don't think anybody around the world has a right to lecture us. If they have any concerns, they can talk about it. If they go public and they think that, they have some kind of an exceptionalism, that they can go public and hector people, then other people have equal right to push back, like some of the Indian ministers have done since yesterday. That is one. The second thing is that, for the Americans, look, if we start pointing out all the problems in America, and we say that every police shooting which happens of black people is because Biden is ordering it, or because the Democratic Party is ordering her. How stupid would that sound? Now, nobody is saying that America is perfect and nobody is saying India is perfect. Do we have our problems? Enormous ones. But when when he talks about, what is happening in India right now and stuff like that, the question to be asked is, okay, fine, the Congress party gave token representation to Muslims, but please ask the Congress party to explain why during the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s, virtually every year there was a major riot, anti-Muslim, anti-Sikh riot in this country. Anti-Sikh only in 84, but an anti-Muslim riot. Why? I can give you riot after riot after riot after riot. People like MJ Akbar, including their members of parliament, people like Salman Khurshid and others have written books on those riots. How do they explain that? They were in charge. Was somebody saying that Indira Gandhi is doing these things? There are social tensions in this country. We recognize those. Those social tensions need to be addressed. But can anybody point out to any systematic, constitutional, legal discrimination against India? I believe Arshpreet is a lawyer, and maybe he should tell us what specific instance of discrimination has been carried out against minorities in this country.
Yeah, and particularly.
Number two.
Yeah, please.
Sorry?
Let's talk of CAA and NRC. Let's talk of how many people were left out of the group despite having all the documents. We all have seen that. We all have seen that, and we have seen how many people have been prosecuted under all the laws that I was talking about: sedition, NSA, UAP, the abuse of power that has been happening. Because the conviction rate has been a negligible low, and the Bharatiya Janata Party, despite that, has been pressing for these laws.
Okay, let him respond to you now, Arshpreet.
Towards the government, disaffection, last point. The sedition law says if you show any disaffection towards the government, you'll be prosecuted. Why should it not be the state? Government is not India. Mr. Obama has lectured the government, not the citizens of India.
Yeah, but I'm not sure why you're talking about sedition, or you're talking about UAPA, or you're talking about cases that go through courts. Once again, Arshpreet, please don't speak over me. I'll give you opportunity. I'm not sure why that is why that is a case against the Modi government. These were laws that existed under you. You never repealed them.
But they were never misused.
But that's subjective. I'm sorry, there could be hundreds of people who could come out and say that these laws were misused even under you. Any law under any government is subject to misuse.
Now please do not speak over me also.
No, once again, you've had your time. Sushant will respond to you. Two of our other guests have not spoken. CAA, NRC, how many Muslims are there in the cabinet?
No, I don't know whether there's any Muslim in the cabinet. Is that the basis on which you judge whether a community is being discriminated against or not? I don't think so. Maybe that is the token representative. Arshpreet, you've had your say. Now let me have my say. Maybe that is the Congress party way of doing things, that you throw a few crumbs at some people and say that, well, we have accommodated them. Right? Let us ask. Arshpreet has not answered my question on the riot after riot after riot under the Congress watch. Was that being done by the Congress party? Because it was being done under the Congress party watch, number one. Number two, when he talks about the special laws, there are special laws, for example, in the US. Please, Arshpreet, give me the similar numbers of how many blacks are in prison compared to how many whites are in prison. Please tell me in the UK, how many Muslims as a proportion of their population are in prison compared to how many Hindus or how many white people are in prison as a proportion of population. Please give me those figures, because you seem to think that if you shit on India, that's the right way to, burnish your politics.
Okay.
But I don't think that is the case.
Okay.
Now, the point is, either you give me that data and then you make a comparison with what is happening in India, or basically what you are doing is all kind of virtue signaling without any basis to what you are saying.
All right.
Because the laws, who brought in TADA and who misused TADA? Please tell us. Who brought in UAPA? How many people were arrested under UAPA when your government was in power? Please tell us in those 6 years.
Yeah. Okay. No. Once again, Arshpreet, two of our guests haven't spoken. Let me give them an opportunity to come in with their original, opening remarks. R. Rajagopalan, is the criticism of the current government fair? Let's say Arshpreet has a point. You look at the representation that the BJP gives when it comes to tickets to Muslims, and you look at the representation that the BJP government gives to minority faces. then would the natural question not arise that, you don't include them in representation in the government?
Shivani, I must congratulate your editorial team for bringing out the best package. That itself replies to the Congress spokesperson. Second, during the Ukraine war, during Corona, Ukraine war, I know there are 1,800 Muslim students have been brought from Ukraine's war zone very safely. During Corona, all the Indian citizens were inoculated. 260 crores. There was no discrimination. Hope Mr. Obama knows about it. Apart from that, Mr. Serene has mentioned about riots, 1984 and others. But I would like to remind you and Mr. Serene, 2009 Sri Lanka Jaffna genocide done by UPA government. DMK withdrew support because of the genocide. And apart from that, to put my point very simply, probably Obama might have met Rahul Gandhi before the interview of CNN IBN.
CNN, not CNN IBN, but yes, our sister concern. But Mr. Rajagopalan, the issue is for the government, and I asked this of a government minister on Friday. This question keeps chasing them. Yes, you could argue that even as the Prime Minister took oath in 2014, we were being told that it's doomsday, especially for minorities, and India will no longer remain a democracy and certainly not a secular democracy. It's been 9 years since then. Has this government, when it says we've not discriminated, been able to deflate this narrative? Now, that's also something the government only can do, right?
The government has been very fair. My understanding is that, even Mr. Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi, who was Minister for Minority Affairs, he was mainly instrument in sending 4,000 Muslim women to Hajj. Why Sushant Serene did not refer that? Why Congress spokesman did not refer that? Did Mr. Obama know about these facts? Has he visited one place? He is getting briefed only by these toolkits and by Rahul Gandhi's occasional press statements. That probably Rahul Gandhi during his USA visit must have met Obama secretly before the interview was happening.
All right. I'm running that analysis one more time. Ashok Sajjandhar, I'm coming to you. I was particularly intrigued by the fact that even when the reporters asked this question and when Mr. Obama talked about it, he didn't talk about, instances of discrimination or violence. He talked about rights. Now, there is not a single right that is denied to any minority in India. Linguistic, tribal, you have backward classes, you have religion. We have lots of minorities in India. Not a single right is denied to any one of them. In fact, under the Indian Constitution and laws, there are special privileges given to minorities, including religious minorities. So I don't understand why this question about rights is fair. Is it fair?
No, I don't think it's fair at all. I think when there are people who have nothing else to criticize the government, and I think this flows out really, Shivani, from within us, from within the country, because this is the narrative that is sought to be painted, that is a narrative that is sought to be transmitted to their interlocutors outside the country, and it is these people only that they are able to hear. You have seen these reports also from Pew. They have conducted this poll, and they have said that 98% of the Muslim population in India feels that they have no problem in
following their
pursuing their religion,
yes.
And they don't feel any discrimination whatsoever. Meaning the percentage of people who feel discriminated in developed countries, in the United States, are hugely greater, in the range of about 42-44% by the same Pew reporting. So, these are non-existent issues, and even within the country, when we find that our political parties have no real issues on which they can criticize the government, this is the narrative that is sought to be
As a
built.
diplomat, can I ask you,
Yes.
were you surprised by the kind of language or even the direction in which Mr. Obama spoke? Because many are pointing out that him, as a former US president, he may not be the current president, but he still has a lot of stature. As a former US president, to suggest that India's internal conflicts, quote unquote, could break it is not the language that should come from a foreign leader.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. I think this is totally uncalled for. And this is sensationalizing it. This is in my view, and particularly because he still goes out on these lecture tours, multi-million-dollar lecture tours, and his voice is listened to with great respect, and people trust him and believe him. For him to come out with this sort of statement without any basis, without any factual evidence, just on the basis of hearsay, people who are the loudest, those voices you will hear and you will start repeating them. I think it doesn't befit a person of his stature, the position that he has occupied, and the reverence that he has, that he enjoys.
I was also intrigued, as I mentioned in my opening, Sushant, I have 30 seconds. There was a vast difference in what Mr. Obama was saying and what the current president is saying. How do you look at that? Was it good, bad cop, or are there real differences in what Mr. Obama is looking at India as and what Mr. Biden is trying to achieve?
No, I think there were two sides to it. One was that since Mr. Biden is in a seat of authority, seat of power, he has to do business with India. He cannot be cavalier in his attitude towards India. He cannot be hectoring towards India. So one part of it was that. The second part of it was that he was on the mark, because again he said that we all have our problems. India has problems. The Americans have problems. If Americans have problems, they will discuss certain things with India. We will clarify to them in our own way. But if anybody in the US or anywhere else in the world expects that we'll become their clones, that we will become, the definition of liberal democracy as per American standards will also apply in India, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. For example, when the Americans are pretty blasé about stuff like critical race theory, or for that matter, genital mutilation of small children of 3 years, 4 years old, I don't think I as a parent will ever accept something like that. To hell with democracy if that is your definition of liberal democracy.
No, not democracy.
So
that's the definition of inclusion and pluralism.
In India.
And I think we know that in some quarters, definition of inclusion and pluralism is getting getting stretched to a certain level where people legitimately have the right to raise concerns. But I've run out of time. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. Let's also now bring you this special conversation that I had with American sociologist Professor Salvatore Babones. Now, he was the first one who actually brought into context the Pew survey that talked about self-reported discrimination in India, particularly by minorities. Listen into this conversation that is still relevant today. In your article, you contend that Christian missionary and Islamist pressures are working behind the scenes in some of these reports we see over India, some of these rankings that routinely seem to be very terrible on India and term India as anti-Muslim or, anti-religious freedom or religious expression. Explain that. Why do you believe that there is a nexus behind these rankings?
Well, so first let me contextualize it. Genocide Watch, international NGO, rates India one of the 10 most likely countries to experience a genocide in the 2020s. Wow. They claim that there is a 8% chance that there will be a genocide in India in 2023. Now look around you in India. Is there likely to be a genocide? I don't think so.
I really don't think so.
But this narrative has been built and built and built. And a lot of it has to do with these international religious freedom reports produced by the U.S. State Department and particularly by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF, which puts together these reports on international religious freedom. Now, the reports compiled by the State Department on India focused almost entirely on complaints made by Christian missionaries. Because if you think about it, if a Muslim in India feels she's facing discrimination, is she likely to go to the U.S. State Department to complain? It's likely not. Okay. So of the hundreds of complaints made to the U.S. State Department about repression of religious freedom in India, fewer than 10, single-digit numbers, have to do with Muslims. 800 or more have to do with Christians.
Okay. And Christian missionaries.
It's all missionary related. However, when the Pew Research Center did its international religious freedom rankings based on these reports, first, it rated India the worst country in the world. I'm emphasizing that. Worst in the world for social hostility to religion, meaning that people face more communal violence, more religious hostility in India than in Myanmar, which just had a genocide. I mean, the Rohingya were driven out of Myanmar. They're claiming the situation in India is worse than in Myanmar. That's all based on these U.S. State Department reports where all of the complaints are made by missionaries. Yet in their text narrative of their report, they only mention complaints
against Muslims.
But we don't have to rely on these primarily qualitative rankings based on reports of journalists and NGOs because we have hard survey data about religious freedom in India. Ironically, it comes from the same Pew Research Center, but from a different group at the Pew Research Center. And this hard survey data shows us that violence or discrimination against Muslims and Christians in India reported by actual Muslims and Christians in India is very rare. The Pew Research Center did an extraordinarily high-quality survey in 2019-2020 of 29,999 households in India. I think they wish they'd gotten just one more, 29,999. Top quality survey, more than an 85% response rate, which in survey research is unheard of. You have to really try hard to get an 85% response rate. This wasn't a telephone or a internet survey. This was knocking on doors, personally talking to people in 17 different languages, all across India. They found that 89% of Christians and 89% of Muslims say they are, quote unquote, very free to practice their religion in India. Only 2% of each group say they are unfree. Okay, so only a tiny minority of Christians and Muslims have any complaint about their ability to freely practice religion in India. I mean, I'll give you another statistic. 24% of Indian Muslims say they face some form of discrimination on account of their religion. Now, that sounds bad. Until you realize, first, 72% of Indian Muslims say they've never faced discrimination on account of their religion. What's more, we can take that 24% of Indian Muslims say they've at some point in their lives faced religious discrimination and compare it to the same question asked in the United States. So the Pew Research Center, in a separate survey, asked exactly the same question with exactly the same wording in the United States, asking about racial discrimination. 80% of African Americans say they face discrimination. 46% of Hispanic Americans. 42% of Asian Americans, and only 24% of Indian Muslims. In other words, self-reported discrimination in India is, for Muslims and for Christians is lower than for Asian Americans. So if you want to say that Muslims and Christians are facing discrimination in India, you have to wrestle with the fact that whatever level of discrimination there is, and there certainly is some. I mean, somebody in India is 1.4 billion people, somebody has faced discrimination. But that level of discrimination reported by the very people who are dealing with it is lower than what Indian and Chinese Americans report in the United States.
And yet it is projected like, you know, recently there have been hashtags about a genocide in India, for example, that India is so anti-Muslim that there's so much widespread violence against Muslims that they can't literally live in India without fear.
Everyone thinks that India's Muslims are on the verge of a genocide except India's Muslims.
Yeah, exactly.
India's Muslims, when asked what are the top problems you face today, number one is unemployment.
Exactly.
Number two is crime. Number three is corruption. Intercommunal violence is number four.
Moving on to our second big story, chinks in opposition's armour are getting wider day by day. Just 3 days after a supposed show of strength in Patna, the war of words between opposition leaders is escalating. Delhi ordinance is continuing to be a bone of contention between the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party. But now, Bengal Panchayat polls have become a point of friction between opposition parties as well. Meanwhile, the BJP has launched a scathing attack on opposition leaders, calling the Patna meet as an alliance of corruption. After 15 parties attended that opposition meet, where they decided that they will contest the Lok Sabha polls together. The next phase of that meet will now take place in the second week of July in Shimla. But take a look at the kind of jibes that are being made by the opposition leaders and parties that came together post that meeting. So Congress's Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, for example, is saying that this opposition meet was a wedding function which they had to attend out of courtesy. Meanwhile, Ajay Makhan has taken on the Aam Aadmi Party, saying that their only motive is to break the opposition unity. These comments came after Aam Aadmi Party warned Congress to clarify their stand on the Delhi ordinance or they will walk out. AAP was quick to react on Ajay Makhan's statement, claiming that the Congress is influenced by petty politics. Meanwhile, in Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, while campaigning for the Panchayat polls, said that Congress and CPI are acting like allies of the BJP. West Bengal Congress President Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, though, did not hold back either. He claimed that Mamata's Panchayat poll campaign exposes the TMC's weaknesses. So the eternal question that we wrestle with one more time today is a pan-India opposition alliance where they can actually do proper seat sharing in each state a pipe dream.
केजरीवाल जी जो है कांग्रेस के समर्थन मांग रहे हैं और दूसरी तरफ केजरीवाल जी राजस्थान जाकर के हमारे सबसे वरिष्ठ नेताओं में से एक जो 3 बार के मुख्यमंत्री रह चुके हैं अशोक गहलोत उनके खिलाफ बोल रहे हैं। तो क्या ये कांग्रेस के साथ में समझौता करना चाहते हैं, कांग्रेस का समर्थन लेना चाहते हैं या कांग्रेस को से दूरी बनाना चाहते हैं?
एक तरफ तो वो कहते हैं कि हम प्रमुख विपक्षी दल हैं, एक तरफ वो कहते हैं कि हम बीजेपी को उनके पद से हटाएंगे वहां पर। दूसरी तरफ इनके जो स्टैंड है, जो भी स्टैंड ये लेते हैं, वो बहुत पेटी पॉलिटिक्स से प्रभावित है।
और कांग्रेस तो एखाने बीजेपी दोषर काजे ओदेरो वोट नय।
विपक्ष जो अपना खौफ है, जो गुस्सा है, जो शिकायत है, उसमें मरहम लगाने के लिए ममता बनर्जी ये पुरजोर कोशिश में लगी हुई है। आज प्रचार में ममता बनर्जी को शामिल हो रही है। इसका मतलब ये है कि तृणमूल पार्टी की ये कमजोरियां।
Well, guests from all of these parties are joining us. Neeti Jain is from the BJP, Sujata Paul is from the Congress Party, Riju Datta from the TMC, and Siddharth Sharma is joining us from the Aam Aadmi Party as well. Let me go across to the TMC first up. You know, we see this particular thing rising up again and again. Riju Datta, I'm sorry, I'm coming to you first up. The TMC and the Congress, right? Mamata Banerjee said, you leave Bengal to us, we will support you otherwise after the Karnataka victory. It doesn't look like the Congress has any, any intention of leaving Bengal to you. So my fundamental question is, no matter how many times you meet, how will you actually divide seats when you've got states in where many regional parties and the Congress have a stake?
See, in Hindi, there is a saying, कि दुनिया भर में देश के लोग प्रधानमंत्री चुनते हैं समस्या का समाधान निकालने के लिए। यहाँ हमने समस्या को ही प्रधानमंत्री बना के रखा हुआ है। So we need to find a solution to the recurring problems in the country, which are larger than any political party. Unemployment, inflation, safeguarding the constitution and its people. So it is the need of the hour that all the opposition parties come together.
I get that, but how?
Congress, I'm telling you, bear with me. The Congress, the 17 opposition parties, including the Congress, which is the single largest opposition party, we have collectively formed a roadmap and we are in the process of doing that. The next meeting is in Shimla, where our categorical outlook is BJP ko hatana hai, desh ko jitana hai.
I get that. No, but Riju, you are escaping the question I'm asking you. All of that is a given and understood. We're not questioning the intention or the requirement. I'm just asking you, how are you going to divide seats? I'm sure you've heard what the Congress chief in the state has said just today.
No, this is what I was coming to you before you interrupted me, and please give me a little courtesy of time. The Congress chief Adhir Chaudhary in Bengal, he is such a tall leader that after the independence of India, for the first time in Bengal, under his leadership, Congress is a big fat zero. He was the leader of the opposition at one point of time who was not even invited as the star campaigner in Karnataka elections. The National Congress leadership who actually matters in decisions like this does not even entertain Adhir Chaudhary in that meeting.
So you're saying that at the national level, the Congress thinks differently than their state leadership? That's what you're saying?
Yes, the state leadership has no relevance. The Bengal Congress has no relevance when it comes to the National Congress, Rahul Gandhi and Mallikarjun Kharge. It's very clear.
But they have also not indicated that they're going to leave all of Bengal to you. But in any case, let me take that to Sujata Paul of the Congress Party. You know, this attack that your state leadership is not the one that will do the decision making and is actually good for nothing is not only coming from TMC. You look at the Aam Aadmi Party. They're also hitting out at your Delhi and Punjab leadership, the state leadership, for opposing the ordinance, the Delhi ordinance by the central government. It looks like these regional alliance partners of yours, they want you to give them the space that they feel they have earned. But is the Congress willing to do so? And they're attacking your state units day after day.
Well, as far as attacking somebody is concerned, this is a democracy and everybody has a right to voice their opinion. So do we. And if there are concerns, we must also remember that right now when we are talking about the Lok Sabha elections, the focus is entirely different. It is on the issues of this country, the democracy and the constitution. So and we are a federal structure. No matter how much the federal structure has been disrespected in the last 9 months, because there is a party in power which worships one man. We worship the people of India, and I'm sure that every other party also does it. And if they do, then of course it will be a fight between Godsewadis and Gandhiwadis. And all the Gandhiwadis
I'm discussing the nitty-gritties.
In spite of the differences.
Sujata ji,
in spite
again,
of the
you're getting into the
problems that
larger
exist.
reason why you have come together. We've discussed that, and you have all the right. Even if there wasn't a reason, you could come together. You don't have to justify the reason. I'm just asking you, how are you going to divide the seats? Is Congress willing to give up Bengal?
Of course, we are going to look right now. The issue is saving the country. And when we are talking about saving the country, we have to save the country from the hate politics, the communalism, the issues, and we have to stand for the people of this country. And that is why, as far as
But Ajay Markan doesn't think so on the issue of Aam Aadmi Party. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary doesn't think so on the issue of the TMC. How will your cadre on ground and your leaders on ground see eye to eye?
When you talk about India, it's a federal country, and in a federal structure, issues in a state are very different when we compare it to.
Yes, but we're talking about Lok Sabha elections. We're not talking about state elections.
So that's what we are talking about. So when you are talking about states, within the states, if there is a problem and if there are issues, well, we are with the left in various places, but we are fighting the left in Kerala. How do you explain that?
Precisely my question.
Yeah, that's fine. There's no problem with that. And so when we talk about the states, there are certain issues which we will fight at that level, and every party will.
Okay, can I ask you one more question before I go to our other guests? You're talking about coming together for Lok Sabha elections under a larger umbrella for a larger cause, but you can't even come together and see eye to eye for panchayat elections. How are you going to carve out your kitties for Lok Sabha?
I'll give you an example. In Meghalaya, the Prime Minister had gone and attacked Conrad Sangma and his party, called them, accused them of nepotism and corruption. But when they won 2 seats and they saw that Conrad Sangma was going to come into power, he gave them a call and they are in power with Conrad Sangma's government.
So it's going to be post-elections.
So in politics, nobody is a permanent friend. And nobody's a
No, I'm not questioning that at all. But interesting what you say. You're basically saying there's not going to be seat sharing before elections, but we'll come together if need be, and if the verdict is such, post-elections.
Not at all. I never said that. See,
but you've given an example of 2 people fighting and then coming together.
I am saying, so when they are doing what they did is an example for everybody to see. But Himachal Pradesh meeting is going to tell us what the strategy is further, and the deeper strategy is not going to be discussed on television.
Fair enough. Let me go to Siddharth Sharma of the Aam Aadmi Party. What the Congress also tells us that they will firm up their strategy on the ordinance in Delhi, possibly before the next meeting in Shimla and possibly even during this week. How confident are you that the Congress will change its stance, which you have almost turned into a make or break as a red line for you to be part of this alliance?
Well, it's not a red line for Aam Aadmi Party. It's a very why are coalitions formed? Shivani, why are coalitions formed? Coalitions were formed during the US independence movement, also between the Confederates and the Unions, during the Second World War, also between the Axis powers and the Allied powers. There has to be a principle to any coalition. And right now, the issue is very clear that right now this is a principal fight between federalism of the constitution versus BJP's unilateralism via coercion. It is as simple as that. And now essentially this is a fight between all states versus BJP now. And now you were speaking about something called nitty-gritty, which is very important. That is the pertinent point here. People would like to know if opposition is going to come together, what is the nitty-gritty of it. So any Lok Sabha election, as we all know, it's a mathematical issue. 51 becomes 100 and 49 remains as 0. So in 2019 Lok Sabha elections, it is very clear that BJP won only 37% vote share, but it got 56% seat share. Whereas the states got 45% of the vote share, but only could get 34% of the seat share. Whereas less said the better about the Congress, because it although got 19% vote share, but it got only 10% seat share. So right now the issue is very clear that it is only the regional parties like, for example, Stalin can beat BJP hands down in Tamil Nadu. KCR can beat BJP hands down in Telangana. Nitish can beat BJP hands down in Bihar.
KCR is not
Shivsena
part
can
of this
beat BJP
alliance,
hands
though.
down in Maharashtra. I'll come to that. Mamta can beat BJP hands down in West Bengal. Congress cannot beat. Kejriwal can beat BJP hands down in Delhi as well as Punjab. So right now the issue here is that it's not just about Delhi. Kejriwal doesn't represent Aam Aadmi Party. Mr. Kejriwal today represents 2.5 crore Delhi citizens. And the way the midnight ordinance has made the Delhi voters vote as zero, the same is happening today in Telangana.
Okay, let's stick to the alliance bit. So you're basically saying the Congress should make way for all of these regional parties that have shown greater muster in beating the BJP. Sujata Paul, you want to respond to that?
That is what data is saying. That is what
Yes,
data is saying.
yes. No opposition unity is possible without the Congress party, and the Congress party is playing an important part in that, and every party is saying that. But yes, there will be various, small problems which will come up, because, like I said, every party will have their own issues, and they will come up with that, which is fair enough because we are a democracy, and without brainstorming, we cannot form a strong, front as well.
Okay.
So it is fine, and there's no problem with that. I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, you don't see any problem with that. Let me give Neeti a final word. Thank you for your patience, but I think you will appreciate on this issue, I needed to get the opposition party's views first. Neeti, do you believe, as the BJP keeps claiming, that nothing will come of this? Or should you actually be watching this, with one eye at least? Because if a lot of parties come together, they can counter the narrative of the BJP.
Shivani, I think your debate has excellently portrayed the entire issue of the matter. So like the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson says that the regional parties are going to play a major role, and all they are asking for Congress is to cede space. Congress is obviously not going to do that. So your initial question to all three spokespersons, which went unanswered, was that who is leaving the space? And you cannot say we decided after the election, because Nitish Kumarji has come out and said that this is about one seat, one opposition.
Yes.
So obviously they're trying to distinguish. The other part being about the seat share and the percentages. So you need to understand, like in Karnataka, I listened to everybody quietly. Please just let me finish. The percentages that you're talking about, the Congress and the regional parties are fighting for the vote share between each other. Even in Karnataka, if Congress won the vote share, it was the JDS vote share that they took. It wasn't the BJP vote share. The BJP's vote share was intact. So if you're fighting within each other...
So the arithmetic doesn't quite work with just coming together. We've seen that in the past as well. Yes, I'll take quick responses from Riju Datta and Sujata Pal. Riju Datta, please go ahead.
Let me respond to that. Because
Riju, 30 seconds only.
Yes. My only response is that, it is very unfair to blame the Congress like this. Congress, as the single largest opposition, has to sacrifice. Yes, fair enough. But we are also ready to sacrifice. Ye hamari ghar ki baat hai, for the country, for the
But where will you sacrifice?
We will all sacrifice.
Where?
We will make sure.
You'll sacrifice in Telangana?
No. Say in Bengal. I am sure Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Mamta Banerjee is going to come up with a solution where either
is not
party
ready to fight with you.
Okay. Yes, Sujata Paul, 30 seconds.
Yes, Neeti Jain is right that their vote share has been intact, and that has been the case even in Himachal Pradesh, but they lost. So they must remember that Congress is the party which established democracy in the country, and we are very proud of all the smaller parties which are today leading their parties, leading their states or their regions. But when we talk about those very votes and that vote share, that means has got divided. And when they get united, your vote share might remain intact because you lead the
Okay, but for that, the oppositions have to be able to put up one candidate against the BJP. We don't know whether that's a possibility at all. I have barely 30 seconds left. I'll give 10 seconds to Siddharth, 10 seconds to Siddharth, 10 seconds to Neeti. Please stick to the time.
Yeah, I think it's very clear now that in places like Delhi and Punjab, it is only Aam Aadmi Party that can beat BJP, and it is very clear that After BJP coming into power in 2014 in India, most of the political parties, including mainly the Congress, has shrunk. The only party which has grown is Aam Aadmi Party.
Okay.
BJP is very worried about
Not
Aam
in
Aadmi Party's
Punjab.
progress.
Okay, Neeti
We
Jain,
know
10
how to
seconds.
defeat
Not in
BJP, and we
Punjab.
have defeated BJP.
Neeti Jain, 10
Shivani,
seconds.
I think you've done a very excellent debate. I'll just end with 2 lines by Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. लगा राजनीतिज्ञ रहे अगले चुनाव पर घात, राजपुरुष सोचते अगली पीढ़ी की बात, which is Modi ji, and that is all.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. We'll continue debating this as it shapes up. Thanks a lot to our guests for joining us. We're slipping into a very short break. On the other side, we've got a special chat with Indonesia Open Badminton champion Satvik and Chirag coming up for making it a habit of writing first for Indian doubles badminton. Faction, the Shiv Sena, has hit out in their mouthpiece, Samna. They have actually compared the opposition to Wagner and the rebellion that was taking place in Russia. Specifically, the Wagner group is, remember, giving nightmares to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and they're claiming that this united opposition would leave the ruling dispensation rattled, and other parties are finding it difficult to find common ground as of yet. Now, Congress MP Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary has mocked his own party's attempt to build an anti-BJP bloc for 2024. The Congress Bengal unit chief has ruled out the possibility of allowing the party's fight against Mamata Banerjee to wane. He said that the Congress will always fight the TMC. Now, remember, what specifically is taking place in West Bengal is politics ahead of the Panchayat polls, which are going to take place on the 8th of July. It's a bit of a litmus test ahead of 2024. We're crossing over to CNN News 18 senior editor Pallavi Ghosh. She gets more. Pallavi, tell us more about the cracks within the opposition unity that are emerging.
See, we have to ask, like we were talking about this meeting was taking place, that there are two important developments and which also brings out the contradictions. On one hand, of course, is the ordinance issue, and we heard Ajay Markan also. Clearly, the Punjab and the Delhi Congress units are not in favor of supporting the ordinance. Aam Aadmi Party, whereas AAP made this a point during the meeting also that how can you talk about opposition unity or taking a fight against the BJP if you're not going to be supporting us on this fascist law? That's one. I think the immediate problem is what we are seeing being played out in West Bengal, where the Panchayat elections are very, very critical because that's always been the basis of politics in Bengal. And in this case, the Trinamool Congress, which is facing a huge battle from the BJP, wants to ensure that the Panchayat polls are swept by them, because that can also become the basis of their performance in the Lok Sabha elections, because in 2019, the BJP had done very well as far as the Lok Sabha elections go. But the problem for the TMC is also that this time it faces a division in the anti-BJP votes in terms of the Congress party. The Congress also has to preserve its identity in this state, because the state Congress president, the leader of the party in Lok Sabha, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, comes from Bengal. And therefore you see the war of words or tug of war between the Congress and the TMC. But not overall, it presents a picture to the voters and political observers as some kind of an inner contradiction, which seems to be against the idea of forgetting the differences in the time being for the sake of a larger opposition unity.
But how is this going to be fixed, the cracks that are emerging within the opposition?
If you could repeat your question, please.
Would you be able to explain how different parties will try to fix these problems that are emerging within the opposition unity?
You know, at the opposition party meeting also this point was raised, and what was decided were two important developments. One, of course, is, and this concern was raised that in some states, for example, the AAP is trying to expand at the cost of the Congress. AAP gave this reassurance, will not do that between 2024. But AAP also has to cater to its constituency, so how long can it keep the promise? The second point which was raised is at the state level, we can have our differences, we can be opposed.
Chirag, I'm sure this title, not just because it's a Super 1000 title, one of the rare ones on the tour, but also because, you beat the world #1 pair, you beat the world champions, you had to adjust your game, playing these top teams throughout. There were 5 matches, and the manner in which you dominated those matches as well. I'm sure all of those things combined make it one of the more sweeter victories.
Well, definitely. I think, like you said, beating the world #1s in the quarterfinals, and also beating the world champions, current world champions in the finals. I think the previous 8 times that we played against the world champions, the pair from Malaysia. Like we've never been able to beat them, and we knew that we were entering that match with a 8-0 record against them, and but we knew that deep inside ourselves that eventually we'll be able to break this barrier, and it was just a matter of time before we did. And I think the way we played in that final, the way we controlled our emotions, and the way we approached the game, I think it was simply fantastic. So yeah, it definitely makes it one of the sweeter wins of all the wins that we've had so far.
And you're racking up quite a few wins. I'll get to that in just a bit. But Satvik, can you give me an idea of the work that has gone on behind the scenes with your coach, Matthias Bo, as well? We spoke about his contribution to you guys last time as well. Just give me a sense of everything that he's bringing on board for you guys.
I think the consistency work, it's always there, 100% whatever we are doing. If you are playing for 30 minutes, it's there till the park. It's not easy. There is no easy session. Even in the fun session, it's like intense was 100%. So that consistency while we are playing and doing things off court as well, taking care of our body, how the champion will be, because he was the champion before, the champion mindset. So he tells us like what to do, what exactly, and plans everything accordingly, and gives time for us to think what you're doing. Are you in the right way, or are you in the wrong way, or what else can be done? All the time, I always feel there's 2 bodies and 3 souls. Even Matthias plays with us while we are playing, so he tells us every point. So we feel very comfortable having him all the time.
I want to ask you, I think last time when we were speaking after the Asia title, you talked about how, every time you win and every time your ranking improves, now you are world number 3 pair. Your draws will get tougher, and more teams will obviously prepare their strategies as they come to meet you. You're no longer surprise elements. Do you think that is going to make it tougher for you to keep up these performances? And how are you dealing as a team, along with your coach, to overcome that hurdle that will come your way?
I think, yeah, like you said, a lot of people will be reading our game, and I think they've been doing that for the past couple of years now. But yeah, I think it's definitely an added pressure. Like obviously people, even the fans will be expecting a lot more from us, but we sort of take it in a very positive manner, because I think we sort of like playing under pressure. When there is completely no pressure, we sort of become a little complacent, we become a little passive. So I think a little bit of pressure, I think it's in a way good for us, I would say.
I want to ask you a final question, Satvik. Why don't you go first about what is that immediate target that is most important for you guys? Is that the number 1 ranking? Is that the Asian Games, the World Championships? What is it?
Everything. It's really important for us to play consistency like this and keep injury free, be fit for all the tournaments. There are a lot of tournaments coming up, and most probably we wanted to focus every tournament, but our target mainly was World Championship, to do better than the last year. Then obviously ranking will follow up. We don't think separately for ranking, but we always focus on tournament, this thing. So but I would say, as you said, like all 3, we wanted to be world number 1, Asian Games champion, and World Championship champion.
Of trying to sabotage opposition unity.
एक तरफ केजरीवाल जी जो हैं कांग्रेस के समर्थन मांग रहे हैं, और दूसरी तरफ केजरीवाल जी राजस्थान जाकर के हमारे सबसे वरिष्ठ नेताओं में से एक, जो 3 बार के मुख्यमंत्री रह चुके हैं, अशोक गहलोत, उनके खिलाफ बोल रहे हैं। सचिन पायलट जो और दूसरे हमारे राजस्थान के अंदर बहुत सीनियर लीडर हैं, उनके खिलाफ जाकर के बोल रहे हैं। तो क्या ये कांग्रेस के साथ में समझौता करना चाहते हैं, कांग्रेस का समर्थन लेना चाहते हैं, या कांग्रेस को से दूरी बनाना चाहते हैं? आज जो आम आदमी पार्टी की चीफ स्पोक्स पर्सन ने जो आज कहा है वो कोई पहली बार तो कहा नहीं। जिस दिन मीटिंग हो रही थी ऑल पार्टी की, उस दिन भी सुबह उन्होंने कांग्रेस के खिलाफ बयान दिया।
So all of these developments are taking place ahead of the general elections in 2024. There is a bid to show opposition unity. Just a few days ago, we saw a meet of opposition leaders take place in Patna. It was helmed by the Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. Now, the days after that meeting, of the opposition trying to build a consensus within the party, within the opposition, the cracks continue to widen. Now, this also comes in a recent development as the Uddhav faction, the Shiv Sena, has hit out in their mouthpiece, Samna. They have actually compared the opposition to Wagner and the rebellion that was taking place in Russia. Specifically, the Wagner group is, remember, giving nightmares to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and they're claiming that this united opposition would leave the ruling dispensation rattled, and other parties are finding it difficult to find common ground as of yet. Now, Congress MP Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary has mocked his own party's attempt to build an anti-BJP bloc for 2024. The Congress Bengal unit chief has ruled out the possibility of allowing the party's fight against Mamata Banerjee to wane. He said that the Congress will always fight the TMC. Now, remember, what specifically is taking place in West Bengal is politics ahead of the Panchayat polls, which are going to take place on the 8th of July. It's a bit of a litmus test ahead of 2024. We're crossing over to CNN News 18 senior editor Pallavi Ghosh. She gets more. Pallavi, tell us more about the cracks within the opposition unity that are emerging.
See, we have to ask, like we were talking about this meeting was taking place, that there are two important developments and which also brings out the contradictions. On one hand, of course, is the ordinance issue, and we heard Ajay Markan also. Clearly, the Punjab and the Delhi Congress units are not in favor of supporting the ordinance. Aam Aadmi Party, whereas AAP made this a point during the meeting also that how can you talk about opposition unity or taking a fight against the BJP if you're not going to be supporting us on this fascist law? That's one. I think the immediate problem is what we are seeing being played out in West Bengal, where the Panchayat elections are very, very critical because that's always been the basis of politics in Bengal. And in this case, the Trinamool Congress, which is facing a huge battle from the BJP, wants to ensure that the Panchayat polls are swept by them, because that can also become the basis of their performance in the Lok Sabha elections, because in 2019, the BJP had done very well as far as the Lok Sabha elections go. But the problem for the TMC is also that this time it faces a division in the anti-BJP votes in terms of the Congress party. The Congress also has to preserve its identity in this state, because the state Congress president, the leader of the party in Lok Sabha, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, comes from Bengal. And
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, when the Prime Minister was on a state visit to the United States and thereafter Egypt, there were many closer home, especially from the opposition, who were questioning whether or not he is even apprised of what's happening in our own backyard, and that too with reference to Manipur. Yes, the Home Minister, who is in charge of the internal security, was on top of it, but it's been 55 days since the crisis in Manipur got underway. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, upon returning from his trip to the US and Egypt, first up, chairing a meet on the Manipur situation, taking stock with the entire senior ministers of the cabinet. Union Home Minister Amit Shah arriving at Prime Minister Modi's official residence and briefing him about the evolving situation in Manipur. Now, previously, Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh on Sunday had briefed the Union Home Minister and said that the state and central governments have been able to control the violence to quite a large extent. But the situation continues to remain tense in the state. Government sources are telling News 18 that at the end of this meeting, the Home Minister, or during the meeting, the Home Minister briefed Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the situation and the steps that have been taken thus far in Manipur. Government sources also revealed that more forces are likely to be deployed in the violence-hit state and especially the core troubled areas. 36,000 security personnel and 40 IPS officers have been deployed by the centre so far. The issue of forces came up during Chief Minister Biren's